you so much for taking time off and being here for this very topical discussion on making threat investigations faster, simpler, and effective. So, time is one of the scarcest resources for most organizations. Manual processes and disjointed threat response solutions result in slow and inefficient incident response times that allow threats to proliferate and grow more sophisticated. In today's fluid threat landscape, it is therefore imperative that SOC teams in enterprises are empowered with a single console for direct remediation, access to threat intelligence, and state of the art tools. In this roundtable discussion today, we'll deliberate on the best strategy to overcome challenges and make threat investigations faster, simpler, and more effective. And joining me in this discussion is an expert. On my right hand is Mr. Anubhav Vahi, Regional Manager Cybersecurity Solutions for Cisco. So before we get on with the discussion, can we have a quick round of introductions, please? Starting with you, sir. Your name, organization, and your role in the company.
Yeah, hi, good evening, everyone. Myself, Nitin Gaur. I am working at Omega Healthcare as a Senior Director Information Security.
Yeah. Hi, good evening, everyone. I am Bataya. I work for a Embassy Group as a Group IT Head.
Hello all, good evening. Myself Rajit, I work for SPAR India. I take care IT infrastructure of SPAR India.
Hi, good evening everybody. I'm Ashok. I'm from Yokogawa India Limited. I in charge of security and infrastructure.
Great. Sir.
Hi, my name is Pavitra. I'm from Yokogawa India. I head IT for Yokogawa.
Great.
Hi, good evening everyone. My name is Anup Krishnan, Director of Malabs Innovation Private Limited, Director IT.
Sure.
Hi, I'm Sri Shankar, representing Aquan Financials. I'm managing information security.
Sure. Now, this sir, everybody knows you, so this introduction is done.
Namnitan, Senior Vice President. I'm playing the role of CISO for the PU India, as well as a couple of things on the the global area.
Great.
So we are part of the NASPLUS group.
Sure.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen. So let's get on with the discussion. We'll start with you, sir, Mr. Navneethan. Sir, digital transformation is a buzzword these days. Every company that we hear about is undertaking a digital transformation journey. But while there are lots of benefits of undertaking digital, there are also certain challenges that are associated with it. Cybersecurity, for instance, is one such challenge, because the more digital you go, the more threat surface is increased as an enterprise. So what kind of challenges do you face when we talk about digital transformation in your enterprise? You anyways are a new age company, fintech. So how critical is digital transformation for you, and the kind of associated risks that it brings?
It's great, Yash. So moreover, it's right questions to I think right people. Since we are moving completely on the digital transformations, right? From the the fintech standpoint, what we are going ahead the journey. We face it's a the different perspective. The one is the people will look for the customer requirement, right? We don't drive it from the how we can drive the business. We look for the what is the customer convenience, what is the customer requirement. If we want to see that the people we are playing the the payment gateway, which we lie in between the the bank as well as the merchant.
Sure.
So as the end customers, they want to have just one go transaction, right? If you want to do the e-shopping or whatever it is, they want to go as a one go transaction. But in between the transaction, there are 15 hops. So the packet will go and do the validations to ensure that everything is in line with what is supposed to happen.
Sure.
So the people requirement from the customer standpoint, here we takes few seconds in terms of to complete the the entire transaction. But the people requirement, the end customer's requirement is one go. They want to go just log in with their ID. They have to finish the transaction and then do the checkout option.
Right.
So here this balancing customer requirement, and then at the same time the balancing with the security, it's a little bit challenge, because
Sure.
we have to cut on a couple of hops, or we have to ensure that how we can ensure the seamless connectivity with the respective the user experience. That's
Sure.
the one way. The second point is if you say the earlier stages, we were having credit card with magnetic tape, and then we went with CVV along with the CVV. Then we went with the matrix card or maybe RS integrations. So now, finally people landed it's all vulnerable, it's breakable, it can be duplicated at any time. Then we went with in terms of EMV.
Right.
That's the way we can have the magnetic chip. It makes the entry, it reads the entry, and then only we can do the the transaction. That's a key step. Then it's again it's like we have to feed and then we have to enter the amount and then enter the the pin. It's like again time consuming, 2 to 3 transaction as the end users they have to focus on that. Then it's went with NFC, right? It's like whatever it is, just tap it, take out the money up to 2000 or something. So it's a one side we are looking for the security, other side we are compromising on the security stuff.
Sure, sir. Definitely.
So somewhere we have to balance in terms
Absolutely.
of how we
Right.
can take care of the end user requirement
Sure.
as well as the security stuff.
Yeah, definitely, sir, because customers are ever so demanding.
Absolutely.
And you need to balance that with, kind of securing your crown jewels. Absolutely, sir. Moving on to you, sir. It's tough to be a CISO today. So,
Yeah,
Please
we also
share your
get to sleep
experience.
A couple of words. One of the points that you said in your opening remark is the increase of threat space, right? The threat landscape. Very true. Especially, he's dealt beautifully on the endpoints and the interface with customers. I would like to dwell upon a couple of points on what you do in terms of securing an enterprise, especially a financial institution. Most of us have a demand to move to cloud today, right? So your traditional days of your data centers is coming, down, and we have a demand internally. We have a pressure to move towards cloud. So at this point, what I see is a movement between your data center and cloud, and having a hybrid. Most of them would like to go for a hybrid one, a configuration. So that in fact has increased the threat landscape pretty wide.
Sure.
That's one aspect. The second one is gone are the days where you protect your perimeter, right? I mean, perimeter alone. Perimeter is one aspect, but the attack vectors are coming more closer to endpoints. And what's the endpoint that they're looking at today? That's the humans, right? So your spear phishing and phishing alone has evolved so much in the last 18 months, right? And the kind of attacks that are happening, especially the ones that you all would have seen in the recent past, where you had Iranian attack on the financial institutions. There were many, but I was focusing only on the financial institutions in the US. Phenomenal. It's amazing the way, you got to really appreciate them, how innovatively they're destroying things, right?
True.
And you got to be up for that. So how to protect your endpoints, how to protect your human thinking, human psyche, and how closely, one of the points that you brought out, you have your technology, but how do you blend your human interface with that?
That's really critical.
That's a very, very critical point. These are the two things that I would like to
Definitely.
throw open
Definitely.
here.
No, you raised a very valid point. When you said, so like Sir just said, there's a lot of pressure from the customers, but like you said, there's a lot of pressure internally as well from the top management,
Absolutely.
which wants you to go on the cloud, leverage all these modern technologies. So the pressure is both from external as well as internal.
Absolutely. So again, there are 3 to 4 aspects. One is your operational costs.
Right.
2, you want to bring down your footprint. And
Sure.
3, you want to make it as seamless as possible, which is having its own challenges in several segments.
Absolutely.
And really, will that happen or not is a different question. But the
Management wants
euphoria
it.
that's built around
Yeah.
it, and that's
Sure.
driving it
Definitely.
much crazier for the
Definitely.
CISOs.
Right. Great. Sir,
So what is missing is the awareness. So people come and go. It's a floating population in any city. That's how the organization is looked at. People run after money, saying that who gives best money, so I'll go there. But they don't even spend a little time there before they look at another opportunity. By that time, some solution is integrated with some overall ecosystem. The man is vanished, or women, whoever is managing that. So hence what happens is the overall ideology and thought process in which the overall structure is created is completely missing, which also open up a opportunity for hackers to get into the system through middleman in the game from inside. The insider threat is more than an external person.
Sure.
Because you these days, whatever GDPR and other things have come into play, the data is all over the place, knowingly or unknowingly. Right? Everyone, if you do a transaction in a bank today, you will get to know where you have sent the money, and you also get immediately an SMS from another bank. Would you like to have a personal loan? Right? So the dissemination of information in an unethical manner, which is even happening, right? So hence it is important. I would look at from a larger perspective, having some definite framework for the HR rather than getting into the security street.
Sure.
Which is quite inevitable.
Sure, sir. Great. Right. Now moving on to you, sir.
See, I would suggest I'm thinking the most vulnerable in an organization is an asset. All the assets, because if you are not patching or you are not managing end of life product and all, we are giving an open door for the threats to come and all. And second thing is, nowadays the vectors are coming through the email phishing, and most of the hackers are targeting on 2024 Olympics and the mobile app, basically on the financial apps like Google Pay. Lot of financial applications are now, so they are targeting on that one. And second thing, I would suggest
the fintechs.
yeah. So all the companies are moving to the IoT. So now 5G is also launching. So that is also vulnerable for the organization. So if the device is
Sure. So, sir, basically what we're discussing is, digital transformation vis-a-vis threats. So, every company is undertaking digital transformation. So, what kind of challenges, what kind of threats do you see in this road to digital? You come from a real estate company.
Yeah, real estate company is much lesser. But anyway, since you are recording, it is purely my personal opinion, nothing to do with my current company or previous companies, right?
Sure.
So essentially, yeah, I think the threat exposure is very similar to any other organization, as long as we have something on the cloud, something on the infrastructure, anything that is running and enabling an application, enabling the business will get exposed eventually. Of course, users are the weakest link anyways. We try and put a whole lot of tech layer on top and protection layers on top of it. Still, users become the most vulnerable in any case.
Sure.
Yeah.
Right. What's the threat landscape like in the healthcare industry?
Yeah. So as you said, like talking about the digital transformation, every industry is moving to some kind of the cloud movement. Instead of residing the data in your data center, moving to the cloud, and lot of other supporting partners with some third party, they're also on the cloud. So SaaS-based application is a challenge,
Yeah.
Where the data resides, what kind of the controls, whether they are running your all the policies.
Shadow IT basically.
Shadow IT.
Sure.
And also the business also demand you have to do the lot of automations for the effective the business operations. And then there's another challenge we are doing the RPA, AI and ML work. So the role of the CISO, first whether he has to ensure they're in the right direction or to meet the justification of the business, because the time to market is a very important key.
Right.
And second thing, if you see in the US, so many hospitals are under attack, so many they lost the data.
Right.
So this is a kind of ecosystem, all the hospitals, the networks are interconnected. So in case of any hospitals compromise, these are trusted networks. So how you ensure the second organization, if it is under attack, how you prevent yourself?
Sure.
So timely detection and the response is the key.
Sure. And I feel this is just the beginning, because you said hospitals are under attack. Tomorrow patients could be under attack, because every device would be tracked, monitored, would be an IoT in itself.
Yeah.
So that could be the next level of threat.
True.
When you actually a human, his life is under threat. So great input, sir. Moving on, sir.
So, being a real estate customer, so we face most of the issues, internal customers only. So, phishing is one of the major issues we are facing. So, we try to bring many tools to control those things, even though we need to educate end users. So, it's a continue, the phishing is coming with many ways, different ways which is attacking. So one is educating the users, and other things, particularly as mentioned by our colleagues, our friends. This middleware is one of the key thing. So even though whatever security we built within house, but now through middleware many challenges we are getting, which we need to tackle.
Sure, sir. Sir.
Being retail, data is the key for us in our digital transformation journey.
Yeah.
Few items are on analysis part. The challenge is analysis tools are on SaaS model. So the problem here is we need to transfer our data to a third-party cloud, and we are not sure how much our data is safe there. That is the one thing. And second thing is on the, and few of my colleagues already mentioned about the IoT devices. Our legacy endpoints like Windows or Linux and all, we know how to protect it through antivirus patches and all. But these IoT devices are also in our LAN, and it is very difficult to segregate physically or logically from our LAN, and this is again prone for attacks and all. So protecting those IoT devices is one more concern area.
Sure, sir.
See, as he was mentioning that we are not focusing only at the perimeter level of security nowadays. So we have to secure the endpoints, even the servers, the firewalls, and all those things. So it's going to be quite challenging to secure all those things and get you a visibility in your network. Where do you find these kind of things? See, because to mitigate a threat, you can't take your own sweet time. So it should be very agile and very quick to address those threats, whatever you are facing. So you need a lot of integrations to happen, whether the threat can be in an email, that can be in a malware, or that can be due to a loophole in the server or due to the patching. So there are various factors which leads to the security loopholes wherein the hackers may get in. So there's a big challenge. That's what we feel like, to integrate all these things, bring it to a single dashboard where you can monitor it and then take actions based upon that, or you trigger an alert if there is an event occurring to that event. So that could be of an internal infrastructure or could be of the customers the same. And also the next point will be on the cloud migration, where we adapt the cloud. So most of them move to the cloud due to the availability, scalability, and security also. And also the businesses can focus only on their core activities rather than the infrastructure what they are going to maintain or they are going to have it. So that being the case, even the monitoring of the cloud and then the mitigating the risks on the cloud and giving a secure platform for the customers is also a point of concern.
Sure, sir. Sure. So Anubhav, we've got a very diverse set of technology leaders here. We've got retail, IT, ITES, healthcare, real estate, fintech, BFSI, and they've shared their challenges with respect to cybersecurity. It's challenges with middleware, shadow IT, insider threat, migrating to the cloud, and balancing customer expectations with securing their crown jewels. So what's your take on all this?
Yes, I think clearly what's coming out as a common thread from all of us is there is a clear understanding that the exposure starts all the way from the endpoint into the network into the cloud. However, what's coming out clearly as well is how do we keep pace with the information each one of these technologies is going to give us? Do we have the wherewithal to have multiple capabilities deployed within our infrastructure, which probably gives us the right level of information about the exposure we carry, but can we keep pace with that information and act on it? So what I did get a sense on is we all agree there is an exposure, we all agree that there's coverage required. How do we keep pace with detecting that threat, using that information and applying? Number one. Number two, there is no end to adding new capabilities in your ecosystem. We need to take a step back and also understand what complexity that new capability is going to bring from a management perspective. And last but not the least, I did hear some of us mention the people aspect to security, not only from an insider threat exposure perspective, but also around how do we have the right set of eyes watching our ecosystem, and more importantly, how do we retain that talent, which is the whole aspect of, do we have the right set of people managing and securing our infrastructure? Are they trained enough? And last but not the least, can we retain them?
Left talking about having the right people at the right place, but the biggest question is, do we have the people in the first place? Because when you talk about cybersecurity, there's a lot of skill gap. Everybody is challenged when it comes to hiring talent, right qualified people to man the cybersecurity domain. What kind of challenges is everybody facing here? Is everybody facing challenges with respect to skill set, and how are you overcoming this challenge? What are you doing to overcome this challenge? Anybody?
Yeah, it's a couple of stuff. Maybe since most of the people, the concern is in terms of the people awareness. Let us take 1,000 employees we have. If we have 100 cybersecurity professional, no, it does not mean like we can go and mitigate the stuff. Until unless out of 1,000, maybe the last one employee is well aware of things, what he has to do and what he should not do, then organization not in the right shape actually. So afflicting awareness on the existing employee, that is key and then primary factors which needs to be taken care.
Sure, sir.
In fact, on the PU standpoint, we have done a wonderful program. We have declared as a cyber champions.
Okay.
If you take any organizations, what they do is most of the time, if you send any training and awareness, it's like they feel as a burden. What's how many trainings I should take care of that? From the legal compliance and GDPR, X, Y, Z. If you lined up, of course, everyone, it's maybe 10 minutes, 15 minutes, but over they are fed up with
You could link it to their increment actually.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. I have done that. What I have done is we have announced a cyber champ program across the organizations. Every alternate month, we do the scoring. We release the the phishing simulation.
Okay.
The people who are all notifying phishing simulation are any genuine phishing to the centralized board actually, where we have set up centralized SOC monitoring kind of. So that's up the point number one. Second one is every month, like 10 minutes, we'll be launching the security session. Who are all voluntarily taking, and then what kind of the questions and answer, who's answer first, all the small, just 2 minutes, 3 minutes. It's not like choking this entire bandwidth. It's really, it went and they given the wonderful response across the employees, where we have rewarded Alexa as the first prize. Second one is the 1 month of your team outing, whatever you are spending, that it's like a different the scheme. See, that's maybe close to 50K we spent a month. If any of the system compromise, it goes beyond.
Right. And
So
the
this
reputation
amount,
loss, which is
absolutely. So this amount is absolutely nothing. So now what's a turning point here is the people are including the top level. They're notifying us. That there is an incident at P.in. That's the key area. It was the different shape. Now I can say close to 30% of employee they are notifying the incident.
Wow. Yeah.
That is so wonderful. Across the NASPAS groups. So we got the nomination in terms of it is innovative ideas and all the things and all. Even a couple of forums also have discussed. I mean, I don't want to name it. The bigger the global organizations in terms of the BFS sectors they have implemented and enforced. And then aircraft, a couple of organizations they have they enforce it. It is so wonderful, right? It's a positive. What people do is sometimes they will come out with a different idea, like saying that, boss, if you don't finish this training, I will terminate your in terms of remuneration percentage or hike or your excellent leave or whatever it is. Let's not take it the negative way. Let's put it to the positive. If you do this, you will get it.
Right.
It's a culture change, right? So that's why, of course, we need the security people one side to manage, to do the governing, all the steps and all. That is one way. It is required. But the fundamental is, we have to ensure that uplifting awareness across the floor in positive way.
Definitely.
If you try to make in terms of overloading with a number of training without any benefit of them, ultimately it's a human being, right? As a me or CEO, CFO, the global, whoever it is, little things in the corner, some point will be that what's the benefit I'm getting?
Right.
It's a
Absolutely.
genuine questions, which rise from everyone. So let's give it back to them, like, what's the benefit? So we also mutually benefited, then we can be in the better position.
Absolutely, sir. Because it's said that chain is as strong as its weakest link.
Absolutely.
So the entire organization needs to be sensitized, made aware of the risks.
It's a cultural change.
Absolutely.
Absolutely cultural change.
Anybody else, sir?
So for the resources, I think one is I think Dharma will say, I think, request you to share about the 3 C's that you normally, what he shared. It's very interesting. I am into training fresh college graduates, not limited to my company.
Okay.
So a like-minded set of people, we have gotten together and we have produced about 560 InfoSec professionals. These are fresh graduates. So more than the technology piece, right? Technology everybody can learn today. Multiple self-paced learning and apps and whatnot. Even YouTube is quite powerful. But I believe that it's those 3 I's that make a big difference, right? The 3 I's that the person is embodiment of is the real InfoSec guy. What are those 3 I's? Integrity, being an embodiment of information, and third thing is he should be an influencer. If these 3 I's are there, then those information security professionals, right? They, integrity is something that you can train people on, right? And give that as their fundamental, foundation. Then the guy should be able to get the information, not read the whole Google and give it out, right? Give what's pertinent, deal with what's pertinent, share what's pertinent. So being right to the context is a very, very difficult task. All of us have GBs and GBs of data here. How much is useful today, right? So that's being informative, not just knowing everything, being pertinent. And being an influencer, right? He was saying, this is a big influence. He is not just impacted his own company. He impacted so many other peer companies just by talking about something. And each one influence one.
Yeah.
And that will multiply. Cause that infectious enthusiasm in people. And that will make a big difference. And I think that has helped create, it need not be an InfoSec profile alone. You can influence some call center agent or someone who is dealing with databases, or someone who is taking care of shared folders, or someone who is providing the front desk support.
Sure.
Can you influence? Those are my thoughts on resources.
Great. Sir?
I was talking to him about this a while ago. So the 3 T's is, one is the commitment, what you do, and second is the conviction, and you also should have the right confidence to do what you execute. But what happens is in the ecosystem where we live, I was referring to a story of a BMC sweeper versus my admin guy. It is an analogy. Probably you may disagree, but I do completely agree with that. The point is, every day morning, some sweeper comes in your area and does the sweeping. But how many of you really know him? The worth of the job what he is executing. 2 days he didn't turn up, the entire area stinks. Then whatever the perimeter or whatever I call it in terms of human life is outside the whole ecosystem, and you never wanted to leave that area. Then you started cribbing about that human being. So flip it a bit on the technology. A guy comes, does the admin activity. His job is, let's say, cleaning the logs. It is replace the physical gap versus a technology. He also does a sweeping job in a sense of electronic sweeping. But he is not aware what he is actually doing. So there's a checklist given, so he does what he's asked to do. He may delete, he may not delete, he may take a backup, not backup. The awareness is completely missing.
Sure.
And at some point in time, some financial transaction, especially in the banking or financial industry, which needs an investigation, you may not have the logs available. You also, fundamentally, there is no retention policy, there is no awareness, there is no knowledge, there is nothing. Graduate, come to work, do, earn money, and say what's look for next money, right? So I think we need to change the way we constitute ourselves as an organization, not just a company. I'm saying the whole ecosystem. So that gives a larger space and opportunity for each of us to work in a collaborative way.
Very true. Anybody else? Anybody from this side?
One thing what we recently realized is when we do the end user training, we are going to share the same data for all the departments. So what we realized is the training what HR team is required is different from the finance team. So what we are going to do is a separate sessions, separate training for a different topic, not on the same panel.
Right.
It's more of a it's a two-way, right? One is shortage of skill, and then shortage of quality people, right? And that's what it is. The bigger challenge is what we are facing. Of course, we are hiring. I mean, we are getting n number of CVs. On the content is X, Y, Z. But when we have just 2 minutes of discussion, then we'll try to have let's drop it and then have a further discussion the later, further CVs. So the quality of things, because the earlier stages, people have fundamentally very strong.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, we can learn about all the recent technology, what is upcoming stuff, which is evolving and then which is changing the entire world.
Right.
But now the people knows here in bit and pieces, and then if you go a little bit 1 inch down, really the blinking eyes. So that's a real challenges on the ground.
So the depth is
absolutely
not there.
Yeah.
Sure.
That's a bigger challenges.
Right. Yeah.
Job description, given by the so many forum like DSCI or maybe USense, the multiple profiles are there. Maybe L0, L1, VAPT, vulnerability assessment. Then you should have a proper incident handler, responder also. To maintain a kind of like the ecosystem or maintain a coordination between amongst all the people is a challenge.
Sure.
And for us like we are 15,000 employee company.
Yeah.
Training, almost 70 to 80% employees are very young, less than 23.
Yeah. Okay.
So while onboarding, we are running a separate session for them from the compliance and InfoSec perspective.
Right.
Background, they are freshers. They always want to connect to the net. They want
Right.
to go, educate them like what our industry demands, how to protect the PHI data. So we are running a separate for them. We are running a separate compliance program, training program, and as I said, the instead of perimeter firewall, firewall is very important.
Absolutely.
In case of phishing situation,
Right.
They have to respond. They have to alert the team.
Right.
All the challenges are there, but still, we are ensuring, we are committing to all the employees, InfoSec responsibility of us is each and individual.
Sure.
Typical software engineer probably can get away with one language, and probably if he's able to kind of say develop a piece of code, he can But InfoSec is not like that. InfoSec is about knowing a whole lot of difficulties of writing the code and about fixing and where it can impact. And it just doesn't stop there. It goes into network, it goes into server, it goes into memory, it goes into the database, storing data, and the laws, regulations. Then comes the compliance policies. It appears like it's a big quagmire. For someone in an entry point to come in to kind of say master this, it takes a lot of time. It's not easy.
Right.
That's what people don't have patience today. The youngsters whom we are seeing, most of them, they just want to be I worked with few of the hackers. They say, why can't I become a bigger guy? I mean, I'm not getting a promotion. It's like, what did you deserve to get a promotion? You hack more, and what do you picture yourself in 20 years or 15 years or 5 years? no clue. This is exactly
Right.
the challenge we are facing. I mean, and but then this comes to coming back to their basics within the, say, if I go and ask, okay, why is it happening? Where do you see if it is happening in OS level? Do you know there's something called log? There's something called security log. There's something called normal log. There's something called audit log. Have you ever looked at any of those? Okay, the jaw drops and eyes go popped. This is the scenario. I mean, if this happens at this level, now imagine this kind of a person to wrap his mind around an enterprise network and extending into a sort of to internet. It's extremely difficult. This is the challenge we're facing with the current entry point.
Anubhav, do you echo the sentiment?
Oh, absolutely. And I think a couple of things that got called out very clearly. I would say it starts with culture and building the culture of security within the organization. And our biggest custodians for that is our employee base. They can, to a large extent, reduce the logs that you have to clean up if they are alert and if they are aware. So security awareness is important. Now, similar to what Navneet spoke about, this entire concept of creating awareness, Cisco does that as well for its employees. So we've got these phishing campaigns that happen really very often, and the beauty of those campaigns is that they are so effective. For instance, they would typically target a change in an HR policy around leave. Now everybody's concerned about a change in HR policy on leave, especially when December is coming in and there's a shutdown happening. So I definitely want to know what's the change, and that would prompt me to go and click. Now what we've done is we've also doing an analysis on how is the response changing over a period of time. You've been investing a lot of time and effort creating awareness, but how effective is it? So have the number of clicks gone down over a period of time? So this is a continuous exercise that we typically do. The other thing is, apart from awareness, is the whole aspect of integrity, which was also called out. There are a lot of organizations who've been very strict on what can you do on the internet, right? Have those organizations been rendered safer? As in, have they not been attacked? Is the question that you need to ask. The balance on agility versus the right level of security. So are we saying if we block complete internet access, there won't be any attack? Is the question that we need to ask. Back in Cisco, there's absolutely no restriction on what you can do on the internet. And that prompts the question on what happens on the other side from a SecOps perspective. What happens within the SOC? Ideally, most of us would expect that the number of logs that you need to probably clean and scan through would be enormous, given the fact that we've not even fine-tuned and restricted access. It's complete full access to whatever you want to do. How do you keep pace with it? How do you stay effective? And that's where the concept of balancing the use of technology and the use of human being come to picture. So can we ensure that the people, the resources that you have within your SecOps world have enough and more time to focus on the real threat, the relevant threat that could actually bring down your business? And you probably need to classify that as well. And I'm not trying to diminish a fact that you have a ransomware attack on one endpoint. A couple of endpoints got impacted because the laptop went out, somebody connected to the internet, they went into a site and they got impacted. You really cannot bog yourself down with that one small attack and say, you know what, the world has come to an end. Such incidents will continue to happen. Your SecOps team needs to know and identify, is there a looming threat which could actually impact your business, your credibility in the environment? And how do you ensure that you balance technology with it? So your technology should be able to bring in that level of automation wherein all these mundane threats are detected and blocked on its own. Fair level of automation, which leaves enough and more time for your SecOps teams to start focusing on the more relevant and the more mature threats which are persistent in that. So that's my view to it.
Sure, Anubhav. So, against this backdrop of skill shortage and the need for, man and machine complementing each other, how critical, crucial or important does, actionable threat intelligence become for a CISO? Anybody? Getting that actionable threat intelligence, will that actually make a difference between, being secure and not being secure?
See, ultimately, if you go back 10 years back, we have a common risk assessment, threat, vulnerability, X, Y, Z, and then what are the, the probability of threats remain common irrespective of industries, the product-based, service-based, consulting, or, which are the healthcare, whatever it is industry. But now it's not the case. It will be the business contextual. It should be the business aware of the risk which needs to be focused. So that way, the threat intelligence, of course, there are one or two layers. It is common for everyone, like rightly told, in terms of endpoint, middleware, and then all X, Y, Z. But in terms of the way I operate, the way he operates, it's absolutely different. So we should be aware of the business context, or the business aware of the respective flow. Then risk may get change over there. So for that standpoint, really we need a threat intelligence based on the business nature or the vertical.
Sure.
And then respective stakeholders, and then how it's very simple. No, if you see most of the cloud hacking, which is, I don't want to name it, whatever it has happened. The couple of key organizations, they were pointing, this is a cloud provider responsibility. They would have ensured that, these are the fundamental stuff, which would have stopped that, major exploit. It may not be like, this is, they have given a rent of house. It's your responsibility to take care of whether you want to close the door, close the window, or, where to tape the gas. That's your responsibility. So you should know the complete checklist, whether it is a SaaS, what are things really needs to be taken care. If it is a PaaS, what needs to, it may not be the blind, the cloud. Sure. So that differentiations really the people have to, because most of the, organization, they are still in the experiment mode. Just do or die or whatever it is, the basic, the fundamental they have, then from there they can take it up. In terms of architecture itself, they need a lot of time. How do we take for the IaaS or the PaaS, SaaS, what are things needs to be taken from end to end. So that way the threat intelligence play major role, which add value for the business, which is really it's happening. Sure. And then other way, if you have a fundamentals are strong, let us take my access control list is very strong. I joiner levers, and then in terms of antivirus, I'm restricting all the gateway from the endpoint as well as the gateway level. Both things are absolutely restricted, and then people are well aware. Then I may not record the threat intelligence. So one side I have to ensure that fundamentals are perfectly fine, and then other side I have to ensure that threat intelligence coming, whatever which is related to my business, because it should not be once we left the things and then paying for something to get something on dark web and deep web. Boss, what are the access control or what are the passwords you have? That means your fundamental is something wrong, right?
Sure.
If you have ensured that, then you might not search in your deep web or dark web.
Absolutely. Getting the fundamentals right is imperative.
Absolutely.
Then you talk about threat intelligence.
Absolutely.
Sure.
With regards to threat intelligence, I think we have come a long way in the last 3-4 years, right? So as you rightly pointed out, it's domain specific. So I would like to limit myself to BFSI sector. So the amount of information we get is phenomenal, right? And it's like instead of getting a bottle, I go all the way to Indian Ocean and search for water. It's so much of information. So unless an organization has an appropriate threat modeling, then it's like you're lost. You lose your context. You may even probably not be able to do justice to those pertinent threat intelligence that you have. You may not be able to even act on them. So threat modeling is something which I find is not so common across. And from someone in BFSI, when they hear we have open internet access, I think I would probably lose sleep with just that information that you got. How will they manage, right? So, so the threat modeling is a key thing which is coming out with various service providers, and even at the very back end, the way we are feeding. So that's altering a lot of the ways we are implementing security today.
Sure. Ajay sir, welcome. You joined a little late. So, same here, sir. What are your thoughts on actionable threat intelligence, sir? Are you leveraging it in your organization? How critical is it? What are your thoughts around it?
Was I not aware of this threat? Actually, no. Google showed me I'm reaching here 6:45, coming from Whitefield in between railway track, sudden closure, 20 minutes gone there, and then MG Road. So somewhere your intelligence threat and all that is, I will relate it in 2 minutes. Two things. I see this whole security business, the IT security business going the way the physical security business has gone. Okay. Everything is outsourced. And since I come from an outsourced world, I do see it happening, right? Because people have understood in the business, one, security has implementation challenges inside the office. So if you're an employee of the office and you restrict your own employees, then there is a problem. So safe way is outsource security to somebody whom we also say, no, he is responsible for security. I don't know what he's saying. Simple as that.
Put the ball in his court.
Put the ball in his court, because then everybody cannot say that my company, this company. You simply say, oh, these are security guys, they have told, and they are outside guys, they have contacts with CEO, whatever in the head office. You can't do anything. So I see it going that way. And being in outsourcing world, I do see it happening. We have also done the same way. That is one. Now you can say what happens to the threat intelligence. It depends which type of threat intelligence is that. If it comes to the agency whom I have outsourced, obviously they will handle. Number one. The number two advantage that I was trying to tell with outsourcing is people in business have realized, or the investors have realized, that very difficult to get a pure play hardcore or assemble a team of pure play security specialists, because nowadays they are like commandos. You cannot hire, you cannot get. So it has become a specialized field to that extent that skill shortage in the world it's better to outsource. With outsource, you outsource your risk as well, right? But you as an investor, just like insurance agency, you pay. Take a physical example, right? Every day we go to office, access card, swipe, to security guard, one, data center control. But once your CEO leaves office, once your MD leaves office, it is the same security guard who opens the door, a sweeper comes in, swipes the room and goes. Whatever is on the table, if the sweeper is intelligent enough to capture it, he has captured. You keep your security in your server rooms, it doesn't matter. The intelligence which is lying at the table, say, goes away. Number two, and coming to data security. So what are you securing, right? You say salary data is very important. Fantastic. Somebody who is just a clerk in some HR department, everybody has them. At the end of the month, he's printing whatever for bank statement reconciliation, employee reconciliation. So what you put on the server and protected with hundreds of tools is actually getting printed out in form of a report. Same document goes to your bank. Whether you put on FTP, you send through email, or bank gives you a secured access that holds salary certificates, whatever happens. So we see it happening in that particular way. Now, that is not to say that you internally do not take action to mitigate threat intelligence. You have to, of course, have this awareness business. I would say last 15 years it is going, it may go for another 100 years as well. Humans are humans. As he said, new generation employs the security awareness, how to react to it. And security is a burden. It's like shackles, right? You can't perform things. So the threat part of it obviously depends from case to case. I am just coming out of a use case half an hour before, something we outsourced to somebody. Those are highly technical designs. Vendor is in some South American country, they have to work, and it does not work in the Citrix environment. The workload is so heavy that Citrix is unable to support. 50 MB files are moving from here to there from a design angle. So now they say we need an IT solution towards it. How do I give an IT solution? So, okay, now with the vendor, okay, you serve other people, these people, how do you do? We use Dropbox. Fantastic. So now we are trying to figure it out as to what to do, how to do in such a way that, again, that is a type of a threat perception, that what can happen go wrong, how to mitigate, how much money to put on the table to handle that. Is employee education the only way? or the technical tools the only way, and so we don't see an end to it. Obviously, security has added a huge cost to the whole IT budgets in the last 4-5 years. And now it is giving actually a 50-50 dilemma to do or not to do, and if to do, how to do. Of course, nobody can say not to do, but how to do is now becoming very critical given the skill shortage, employee perception, the nature of risk. And with insurance companies coming in, people feel that okay, it is better to outsource and insure yourself because if something happened. But I've really not heard a case where something happened in IT and insurance company even paid or not paid, because there are so many variables inbuilt in between. As you said, one window is open, one door is open, it is your responsibility. So looking forward to hear what you guys have to say to cool off this problem.
Sure. Anubhav?
Yeah, so there were two things that got called out, and I'll start with the first one around threat modeling and threat intelligence. I agree to a large extent that there is a notion of threat intelligence, and that's where the problem starts. Which one is relevant to us? For instance, you probably have your CEO reading the newspaper in the morning, or maybe Google today will send you an alert. Whatever you've been browsing, they'll tell you this is the latest and greatest threat that you need to look at. And then comes an email saying, guys, I'm attacked. And that's where it starts. Now, there will be so many variations to that threat intelligence today. The first question that you need to know is my solution today capable of blocking this threat? And that's where it starts. So then you send a mail out to your SecOps team, and then they start scrambling and figuring out, have we seen it or not? So what's typically required is, and that's where I'm going to be talking about it very briefly when we open up the session on the presentation piece. Can I consume threat intelligence from anywhere, in any form factor? And then go back and check, how does my security sensor deal with it? Does it have the intelligence to block it or not? And if yes, have I seen an observable related to that threat environment? And if I did, now can I go back and say, was that blocked or not? And if it wasn't, I'm not blaming my OEM, I'm not blaming anybody here. It's possible that they are still investigating, but I have intelligence from somewhere in the world which says this is bad. So while they are doing their job, let me override from here and say, block it until we have the right level of intelligence. So that's something which is doable. Have we achieved perfection on it? I think not. But we are walking that path, and I think to a large extent, we can go ahead and reduce some of the overload that we create on the SecOps team with what we call a threat response.
But something which is so technical, where do you need humans on? If it is a logical and technical.
So I think just before you came in, this was one thing that we spoke of, and this was about how do we balance. I wish we could have technology that could do everything and automate it.
No, it can at least tell you that it cannot be blocked.
So that's what I was referring to. Yes, it can tell you that I understand that this is a SHA value, but according to me, I don't see the SHA value as being a malware. I'm still investigating. But I have seen that SHA value in your network. That's important information for you. So as long as you know that yes, this particular bad file is in my network and my solution has not been able to block it, that's good enough information for you to act on. And that's what I was referring to as threat response, and it's doable. To a large extent, it's doable, and I'll be speaking about it. To the information that you spoke of, and that's again relevant to one of the questions that got asked earlier around the skill gap and the capability that we're trying to fulfill. I think I would absolutely agree that one specific area within security operations has to be deliberated on from an outsourcing perspective, and that is incident response. I'll tell you why. We spend a lot of money on technology and people to run our security operations. But how many of us have gone back, and again, I'm sure you would have done it, but how many of us have gone back and questioned our entire process and technology to state that if there is a threat today and if there's an attack today, what are the top 3 things we're going to do? And how many of us have been convinced with the answer we got with it? And that brings us back to this question of what can we outsource? Something as critical as threat response or rather incident response is better outsourced with people who know how to do it, and they do it day in and day out. It also spares you of the trouble of retaining that top talent, which is absolutely the most expensive talent, who have to do that incident response capability in your environment. So that part I completely agree with. Deciding the entire outsourcing of security operations centers, debatable. As you said, when you rightly called out, to what extent do you want to outsource your risk depends on your business, and that's a very specific question that every individual organization has to look at. There's no one size fits all for that.
Yeah, this is it's very interesting. The closing note you put it. Just I'm looking. What are things can be outsourced, right? How the people are owning that. The responsibility. It may not be a 9 to 6. It's done, cut out, and the next engineer will come and join. He will take over then. If it is an internal employee, he'll be just owning this entire stuff, right? How maybe from the vendor's perspective, you are managing and then fulfilling. This is most of the CIO, the questions, because when we outsource, how the vendor is owning that, the issues from end to end. I'll tell you the simple stuff. If you buy a product, so maybe the global product or whatever it is, if you are in the US regions or maybe the India regions, 9 to 6 they cover in India. Then it goes to the other regions. A soft 6 they close. I have updated the case. It has been done. Then other people will come and open. They don't see what's on ground, what's happening over there actually. What is the consequence? How soon they have to address it? It may not be measured in the SLA. Of course, it's a SLA based, but however, in terms of how your owning is really from the CISO standpoint, I believe most of the you guys agree. Internal employee, and then of course in terms of SME expertise, we'll get it from the external. It's absolutely fine. But what's a percentage of things ownership the people are owning and then get it done? It's a very the important. And then
I'll add one spice to this to add to what you're saying. How many of these outsourced vendors would be willing to take on a penalty clause in case there's an attack? And they have not been. Nobody will be able to do that.
I tried several times to include the penalty clause. None could accept it. That's on the SOC.
And that's where they will open up what he mentioned. There are 10 different variables. Can you take care of them and take accountability for it? Then I will take the penalty.
Yeah, there are.
Go ahead.
Yeah, for example, coming back to the same threat intelligence, the scenario is simple. Very on the ground reality, what is happening is every product, every security product, more or less comes with some sort of threat intelligence, whether we accept it or not. But where is it accessible? Not really accessible in human form. It is in the back end. But at the same time, if you are having say 5 products in your data center, you have 5 different sources of threat intelligence already there. Right? It's not aggregated, not working to your advantage, not working for your aggregation, not actionable. The question comes is, if you are able to bring in a layer above using some sort of SIEM, to some extent you can leverage some part of it, and usually the SIEM again comes with another source of threat intelligence. If the product is capable of integrating such, sometimes they do integrate inbuilt, sometimes it's outside. So that what we really need is not ATI but AATI, actionable aggregated threat intelligence. The trouble with us is we are spending and paying for it but unable to use it. That's the pity of a typical consumer on the security enterprise security product.
Thank you so much for bringing that up. Do you have any more questions? Because I think
I guess I mean, it's been close to an hour, and the discussion is still going on. But I'm sure Anubhav is going to address all these questions in his presentation. So
disclaimer here. Not all of them.
Most of them.
I'm not a superhuman, but
most of them.
I'll be honest with you, and while I speak, will you please have my presentation filled up, if you don't mind? So I'm not going to give you a silver bullet because I don't have it. But what I'll definitely do is, picking up on what we spoke, and fortunately for me, I think I was lucky today, and I will open up to you a capability that we bring to the table. It's called the Cisco Threat Response. And I will present that to you, and post my presentation, we can probably have over networking a conversation of how relevant do you really see this in the current environment, and to what extent will it solve the problems that we spoke of? So I think we just spent 15-20 minutes, and I promise to stick to my time. I know you're kind of running over, so I promise to stick to my time, 15 to 20 minutes, and I'll kind of cover most of these things that we spoke of. All right, so let's start with what we spoke of. And again, we started off with talking about the entire IT environment becoming agile, which means there's a dynamic workplace, we've got a mobile workforce, we need an on-demand and intent-based workspace, which means people are now moving away from this entire concept of having employees coming into the work environment. They can probably work from anywhere, and more often than not, we're seeing workplaces coming up as well. IT is typically being worked as a service. Now, the workload environment has a very broad spectrum today. So you've got the Gen 1 apps that you need to take care of. You just can't shut them off. You know, you've got SaaS-based applications coming in, most of them native on the cloud now. But how many of us have been bold enough to say, you know what, this particular application can completely be replaced with the new app on the cloud. I'm going to turn it off. So you have to now manage your entire landscape in a very broad spectrum to ensure that your Gen 1 works as well as the new applications work as well. And again, in security and compliance is, you have to live with it. No matter how much of it is slowing you down or not, you have to live with it because you have to stay in the business. Now, the future state that we're talking of, again, security loves jargons, and we've all used some of them. I've also taken the liberty of using some of them. We're talking about something like a seamless, secure access, which is going to be perimeterless. So which means employees come in, work from anywhere. It's going to be device agnostic. Policies are defined in a manner that there is zero trust. However, how much effort are we putting in to ensure that we've identified the assets that come into a zero trust world? This jargon of zero trust is doing the rounds. Everybody wants to do zero trust. There are vendors who come and tell you today that you're talking zero trust, talk to us. We have that one solution on zero trust. Let's be honest to ourselves. Zero trust is a journey. There is no one product or solution that can help us with zero trust. It is an ecosystem that you have to create, and it will take time to develop. But it starts with defining our assets. Can we all be honest to ourselves and tell our companies today that yes, we know every single asset that we have in our organization? And if we can do that, I think walking the zero trust journey will become easier. Then comes, and again, as I said, I have tried to be living with the time, and I've tried to create some jargons. Some of them may not be relevant here, but VDR. Do I have the right level of visibility? And is that visibility helping me detect threats which are relevant to me? And if that is the case, has it really helped me reduce my time to respond? Because I have to also ensure that the hacker is still sitting in, and I have to increase the time for him to hack. The more I increase the time for him to hack, the easier it is for me to detect and respond. Then comes this whole world of agility. Everybody wants to move to the public cloud. There is a concern on security, but I'll take a very crude example to illustrate this. Personally, in our personal lives, all of us look at keeping one of our most critical crown jewel in a locker, in the bank. We typically don't keep it in our own homes. And we trust that the bank is going to keep it safer than us. Now that concept applies even to the cloud security world. We've got people who have invested in an infrastructure, who promise to have policies and compliances in place, who are going to take care of your crown jewels. But they have a caveat there, and I think people who've been involved with the public cloud world would have seen something called a cloud shared responsibility disclaimer that comes in that you have to typically sign. And that's where the catch. You will have a lot of visibility to what they are protecting, but you have no visibility to your responsibility on that public cloud that you need to protect. And that's where is the catch. We spoke a lot about the people aspect. And again, the buzzword doing the rounds on this is the cybersecurity fatigue issue. So you've got a team, and the team is overwhelmed. They're tired of looking at logs, they're tired of cleaning up those logs, and in that entire haystack, they don't know which is the needle that they need to really pick up. So effective threat response directly correlates with how efficiently you can look at the incidents and the information that you're getting from your system. Then comes the entire aspect of zero tolerance on compliance. So if there is a paper policy that you created, how sure are you that that paper policy actually made its way into your IT systems. So policy says, here is this person, the CFO of the organization, who's typically allowed to access a particular resource on the finance server. Great, he's got full permission. But he's obviously not supposed to misuse that information, which essentially means that if he downloaded that payroll data over FTP, have we done some level of analysis to figure out whether he was supposed to do it or not? The other example is the paper policy said, sales employees have no business to connect to your finance server. Now you had a planned event, you made some changes to VLAN, some ACL entries got deleted, created an exposure, and now I'm seeing that happen in the network. Who is looking at that? And then comes this aspect of creating the entire security culture within the organization. I think all of us agree on this point. While it's the last point on my slide, I think it's the most powerful point. Now, I'm going to throw in some data because the data is going to establish what all of us are seeing. This comes from a cybersecurity assessment that we did with a lot of CISOs across the APAC region. About 2,000 respondents came in, and they talked about their top issues. And I'm going to start with the regional overview to what this report said. If you observe here, most of the security practitioners came back and told us that their biggest problem was the number of alerts that they need to look at. Close to about 10,000 alerts per day. And over a period of time, this has only been going up. Now, the interesting part when you looked at these alerts was, of the total number of alerts that got generated, how many of them got investigated and how many of them got remediated. And you'd be surprised to know that between 2018 to 2019, the number is dropping, which means if I had 10,000 alerts coming in 2018, I only investigated 56%. Now in 2019, it dropped to 44%. So I'm not able to keep scale. When it comes to taking action on those alerts, the problem is worse. Only 38% of those alerts actually got remediated. Now, also they also called out what was the impact in terms of the downtime for each of these breaches. So if you see, a lot of organizations had breaches that lasted 24 hours in terms of downtime. Another view to it was, when you look at most of these organizations, how many organizations had multiple vendors in their security architecture? If you look at it, close to about 41% organizations said they had more than 10 vendors. About 6% called out 50 vendors in their security landscape. Now think about the number of logs. Now think about the integration story.
What vendors are they?
The security vendors who are providing solutions to them. For example, 10 vendors. It could be a firewall vendor being different. It could be your web proxy vendor being different, IT vendor. Yeah. Now let's look at what was the India perspective to this. Now, if you look at the India perspective to this, again the alerts here called out was about 5,000 alerts on an average on a daily basis, which is about 46% responders saying it's more than 5,000 alerts that they look at every single day. One good thing that happened for India was that the number of vendors, and I think this is what's talking about consolidating the architecture, building an architecture which has fewer OEMs to manage from a security perspective. India did a better performance here. We've dropped down from 57% to about 29%. Now the fatigue issue that I spoke of earlier exists here as well. If you see, even we've dropped from 61% to 57% on the number of alerts we investigated. And we've dropped from 52% to 41% on the number of alerts we remediated. So the problem of cybersecurity fatigue is prevalent here as well. I'll skip this one because this talks about the average length time for a particular breach that took place. I'll talk about the barriers that we are facing in terms of adopting advanced security technologies. And one of the top barrier that came back from the security team was, there's way too much of workload on us. There's way too many logs for us to look at. We are also being subjected to cybersecurity fatigue. So clearly, one problem that we have in hand is the number of alerts to look at. Do we have an effective mechanism to reduce the workload on people who look at your systems? And do we have an effective mechanism to consume threat intelligence from anywhere in the world and apply it to our organization? And that's what I'm going to segue into. Now, even we as Cisco talk about building a zero trust model, but we do not hinge it on one particular product. The approach that we talk of from a zero trust perspective, and it's a journey that we are really talking about. It will take, if not a couple of years, it takes about a couple of to get basically started on with it. It takes about a few months to establish it. It's built on 3 aspects. Number 1 is, how do you ensure your workforce is protected? Number 2, how do you ensure your crown jewels, which is your workloads, are protected? And then how do you ensure your workplace is protected? So it talks about a 3W architecture, wherein when you talk about your workforce, you have secure endpoints, you got secured users, and we specifically call out secure email, because that's where 70 to 80% of your threats come from. When you talk about your workplace, and this goes back to what Navneet mentioned, he spoke about segmentation, he spoke about secure access. Do we have the right policies today which ensure that we can call out segregated access, privileged access for users who need that access? Do we have the capability to ensure that our segmentation works, which means our high critical zones and our low critical zones are clearly segmented? If there is an exposure on the low critical zone, it doesn't get passed on to the high critical zone. Have we ensured our asset identification is in place? And with that, you can possibly run effective behavior analysis on your network. Then comes your crown jewels, which is on your workload. So your applications, your workloads, your behavior analysis, irrespective of it being within the 4 walls of your data center or being on the cloud, is in place. And that's where I start applying my insider threat detection. Now, these are a couple of different capabilities that you're building in your security architecture. What's critical here is you have to interwork, and you need credible threat intelligence, and it doesn't matter where this intelligence comes from. Mr. Boda made this point that I have so many different products, each one of them has a lot of intelligence to it. What is my access to that intelligence? And I'm going to talk about that in a few slides from now. And that is where I build what is called as threat response. So I don't care where this intelligence is coming from. What I do care is this intelligence relevant to me, and am I exposed basis this, and what is the action I need to take? Now, with that in mind, I'm going to move on. And
Anubhav, just one question on the previous slides, like how you are measuring, and then what are the factors you monitor in terms of insider threat monitoring?
Okay.
Because now it's like a trusted employee, right? They are sitting over there. Of course, we do the behavior analysis and all the things. But from this threat standpoint, what are the parameter guys focus? Like insider threat detection. Of course, external, it's fine, right? Because we know that what should send and then who has to access. That's a different ball to put there. But the internal, it's absolutely trusted folks.
Perfect. Great question. Now, behavior analysis is a capability which every security solution will claim to have. Right? So let's first put disclaimers on what we mean by behavior analysis. When I'm talking about behavior analysis, and if it's with the perspective of within the workplace, I have people who've come into the workplace, they have ensured that they are the right trusted entities, which means I am an employee of the organization, I have passed all basic controls, I am within the perimeter today. Now, and I gave you this example of, let's take the CFO. The CFO is within the perimeter, he's sitting in his office, he's gone ahead and accessed the finance server. It's a Saturday evening, 10 o'clock in the night, and he's downloaded 5 gigs of data over an FTP session. Trusted. He has the access. This is where I'll apply behavior analysis to see, have I seen this behavior before?
What will you do? You will send a mail to CEO, your CFO is downloaded?
No. We first need to know what's happened. Is the CFO actually doing this? Are we sure? So if you hear me out on the use case, you'll understand what I'm saying. The CFO's endpoint is displaying this behavior, right? It is obviously connected to the perimeter, it's authenticated, it's in the network. First of all, we've not really seen scenarios where a CFO typically logs in at 10 o'clock in the night on a Saturday evening to do an FTP to a finance server. They typically don't do FTP sessions. So that's abnormal behavior. Whether they are doing it,
so it's a pattern check. Yes, CFO will have access to download, but not FTP.
Exactly. So this is a behavior that they've never exhibited before, and they're not supposed to be doing this. It's pattern-based recognition. So this is a trusted entity doing something which they've not done before, and they may not even know that they're doing it because their endpoint has been taken control on. So that's just the visibility aspect to it. This is one example of how you do it within the workplace. On the workloads, when you talk about insider threats, it could be process anomalies that you're seeing on different workloads. You typically have now opened up your workloads to talk to different applications. Today, a lot of us struggle to figure out what's the application dependency that we have within our environment. Which application is talking to whom? Are they allowed to make those connects? And now, am I seeing processes being spun up on my workloads because of this inter-application discussion that's going on? And again, these were all trusted because these are all your own applications. So that is what I mean by when I say behavior analysis and insider threat detection being done on the workforce and on the workload.
This is more of the inside thread, then that means it's not only on the endpoint, right? We need this, all the applications should be part of the scopes to understand who has to be. It's like a little bit, the SOAR kind of stuff, where we'll be connecting, all the systems so one way. Then we'll be doing the analysis, so who's supposed to be, who should not be. Then we come to the conclusions, whether it is genuine, it's like, some malicious stuff.
Absolutely, and I'll take an example of something that we do on the public cloud. A lot of us have a lot of capabilities within our premises to do net flow analysis. On the public cloud today, we don't have visibility to what's going on from an insider threat perspective. So in Cisco's case, we've got a capability called StealthWatch Cloud, which is natively present on Azure, AWS, and Google. And that is able to spin up and tell you, am I seeing this abnormal behavior? For example, there is no business for somebody doing an SMB traffic initiation on your cloud instance, and then that's actually happening. So it starts spinning up that information.
So it will have this own use case kind of stuff, or just we have to create based on the applications?
So there are set use cases on it, and you can customize them further. But the basic use cases are already built in natively in the solution, and I can actually run that through with you. So that keeps developing. So the use cases keep developing. As it keeps developing, this is a very smart solution, and it's living with the time around feedback being incorporated back to engineering real time. So one interesting aspect is, and the problem, it actually fixes a problem with behavior-based solutions. Behavior-based solutions typically have this problems of false positives. Yeah. So here, when it throws up an alert to you, it will not let you close the alert till the time you tell the system that this alert was helpful to you or not. So if you say it wasn't helpful, the feedback spins back to engineering to figure out that we've been generating alerts which are of no use to us. And that's how the system learns and keeps improving. And we've got a score of close to about 97%, and I could be wrong with 1 or 2 percentage points here and there in terms of the efficacy it generates on the alerts. The pattern on this system is about 3 to 4 weeks on StealthWatch Cloud, 3 to 4. It sets the baseline. 3 to 4 weeks, you'll start getting meaningful results. So when we start an assessment, a cloud assessment for our clients, the setup takes about 2 days because it's natively on the cloud. You don't need to spin up anything, but it takes about 2-3 weeks to give us some meaningful data to you. Okay, now I'm going to change gears and I'm going to address something which we spoke the most about: threat response, intelligence consumption. Now, this is a typical scenario for a SecOps person today. They've got threat information. The question they typically get asked is this bad? Is it really bad? Why? How? And has it impacted us? And this person typically has to go back and check this on firewalls, endpoint security solutions, the white elephant called SIM, your IPS, and so on and so forth. Now, imagine the plight of this person, especially when you are limited on your staff in a security team. Now, these questions are also very typical. You read, you learn about a new threat, and the question is, am I really impacted? Now, Cisco Threat Response came in as a capability that we built just about a year and a half back. And this capability, and these numbers are about 8 to 9 months old. It's only improving over the period of time. We don't really charge for Cisco Threat Response. It's a free capability that comes with the solution. Only thing is, the capability is effective if you have an architecture which has at least 2 products on it, because otherwise there's no benefit of doing threat response. So this is where we've got 1,500 plus customers who've been actively signing up over a period of time using our solutions on Cisco Threat Response. What does it really do? Some of this is really fine print, but I'll walk you through it. First of all, it has its own intelligence coming in from Cisco's intelligence called Talus, which has intelligence about bad domains, bad files, which comes in from our anti-APT product called AMP, extends it to our network, the endpoint, and the cloud, and it starts building a capability where not only are you able to go back and see if the threat is there in your environment, you're able to do a remediation action as well. Now, let me talk through on how this typically happens. Let's take the example of an incident responder that you have in your organization today. 32-year-old person, well sought after, highly paid, stressed out, because obviously every question goes to this person. And typically the goal is monitor any incidents that are going on in the network, respond to something which could be critical and can bring the business down. Now, here is a day for this person. Typically, questions asked to this person is, I'm seeing a new threat, is it relevant to us, is it bad? What this person typically does is, picks up the threat intelligence and starts looking at different dashboards within the organization to see if that threat is seen or not. Problem gets magnified when somebody says, you know what, have you checked Palo Alto intelligence as well? Or did you check McAfee? Or do you know what, Symantec released some intelligence on this. So go back and see if this various sources of intelligence that are coming in are seen in my network. I wish he could see it on just one product. So he starts looking at different products and starts validating if it was seen across these or not. If you had the SIM, you would probably expect the SIM to do a lot of this job for you. But does that really happen? Then comes the fact around, yes, I have the threat intel. I'm going to make decisions on changing policies or enforce it. I wish it could stop with just enforcement on one product. You have to go back and ensure that your firewall has the enforcement applied. If you have a proxy, it has to take care of it. If you have the endpoint, take care of it on the endpoint solution as well. If you have to change your policies on your behavior tool, you have to go back and do that as well. So the policy enforcement also gets added on. Now, this is what Cisco Threat Response is expected to do. It builds this management API on top of your existing infrastructure. So you've got your infrastructure already in place. I'm going to build this management API on top, which will not only consume threat intelligence from Cisco Talis, it can consume threat intelligence from anywhere in the world and start applying it back to your environment. So essentially what happens is, the same SecOps persons is getting this input on intelligence from anywhere in any form and any format, and this tool will go back and check the various security sensors and come back and tell you whether this threat is seen in your network or not, and if it is, do we need to block it? And that's what typically threat response does for you in a nutshell. Now, when you use it, what happens? So this is basically your team, and you've got information, you've got threat intelligence, you've already fed it to the dashboard. It will go back and check if it is seeing observables related to this threat intelligence in your network. And if it is seen, it will probably gray it out. It grays it out in case it was not blocked by your security sensor. And that's where you can take a decision and say, I'm going to start a new investigation on this particular incident, and I'm going to make an override decision over my security sensor. And let's argue for a minute that it's Cisco's own EDR solution called AMP endpoints. So AMP endpoint typically is giving a gray response saying, I don't know, I'm still kind of sandboxing it and figuring out if this file is good or bad. And in this meanwhile, I've got this threat intelligence that comes in from any other source which says this file is really bad. No worries, let's override what Cisco AMP is saying. Let's block it for now. Similarly, comes back to domains. So I have threat intel which tells me that some of these domains are suspicious. And let's take, for example, you've got Cisco's Umbrella, which is our DNS security solution in action. Now, even for argument's sake, even that's kind of called it suspicious, but your policy on Cisco Umbrella says that allow suspicious domain, because I don't want to really slow down things in the office. So if it's suspicious, allow it, and we'll make a decision later. This is what it's going to tell you. So now you've got relevant threat intel from somewhere which says these domains are bad. You make an override decision, and you also know what disposition was made by Cisco Umbrella on it. The third is making decisions on blocking file extensions, file execution within the network. So threat response actually creates these maps for you, and it will start telling you what is the dependency of a particular file that's moved in your organization and within the organization. So you will start creating a map for you within the Cisco threat response tool, and then you can start making decisions on whether these files were actually blocked or not, and if they weren't, can I override and make a decision. Last but not the least, you can actually pull up threat intel from anywhere. So it's not restricted to a particular vendor. It could come in from US cert, it could come in from India cert, anywhere, doesn't matter. Any form, any factor, just pick it up and create a new case investigation on threat response, and it starts working for you. So this is what I was showing here. We had some information from US cert, picked it up,
through it as a new investigation, and it starts investigating for you to say if these files or these bad hashes or these domains were seen in your network. And then the good news is you can start documenting the analysis. So all the investigations that you do on Cisco Threat Response become new cases and new case investigations that you can keep a record of, so that if the incident response investigation has to go on further, it can be done on this tool. Last but not the least, you could actually create this topology map on Cisco Threat Response to see what are the different internal targets that were impacted by that particular executable or that particular threat. It will go back and tell you what were the associated files which are currently being shown as gray, but they were the ones which actually came into the network and brought a fragmented attack with a bad file that impacted those targeted systems. What are the file names, where are they stored, what are the paths that they followed. So it can go actually up to that depth, and it is leveraging the EDR technology that you have on AMP that we have to give you all this information on one page. It will tell you what are the local sightings, when they were made, and of course what different intelligence tells about that particular hash value. So vendor A could say X, somebody can say Y, so it will give you that entire disposition across global
It's moreover on the processing file, or it does complete system scans and then check the hash values, how it works.
So as I said, threat response is an API, a management API. It leverages your security sensors to do the job. So it's kind of getting the threat response capability to you. The actual job of an EDR is continued to be done by the EDR.
Yeah.
It seeks information from the EDR to say, have you seen this SHA value, and it marries it back to the threat intelligence. And it also asks, this threat intelligence says that this SHA value is bad. You are saying it's a clean file, there's a mismatch. Then it will start looking at, are there any associated files around it? So this came in as a clean file, but there's a bad file associated with it. And yes, I am investigating that file, but my intelligence says it's a bad file. So it correlates that for you and presents it to you in a manner where you can take actions. At this point in time, we have very, very limited third-party integration, and that's mostly with the AV tools that we consume information on. At this point in time, we work with Cisco's EDR, which is AMP, Umbrella, Cisco's firewall AMP capability, Cisco's email AMP, web proxy, and the behavior analysis solution I spoke of called StealthWatch is integrated. So by another few months, the last integration we're going to do onto this is our StealthWatch cloud piece. And with that, at least our entire portfolio can be run with Cisco Threat Response. But apart from that, only VirusTotal is the other third-party ecosystem we have. We have open APIs, but have not reached a stage where it's completely open. All right, so it's in summary, what it's typically trying to do is it's trying to reduce that workload around threat response that we struggled with during the conversation earlier. We spoke about, I have so many sources of intelligence, I don't know what part of it is relevant to me. Here, just throw it into the dashboard, it does the job of checking with your sensors if there is a relevant threat and starts presenting it back to you. And essentially what we are trying to do is reducing this whole problem of cybersecurity fatigue in your organization. So there are a couple of things that I spoke of. One was obviously bringing in Cisco Threat Response to build in that level of automation. And the other was orchestrating a zero trust approach across the 3 Ws, which is your workloads, your workforce, and your workplace. So that's essentially what I really want to talk about. I think we're really running short on time. Actually, none, sir. I'll tell you why. I'll tell you why. No, I'll tell you why false alerts doesn't come into the picture here. There's a reason. The concept here is not about detecting the threat. The job of detecting the threat is with the sensor. What I am doing here is I've created an API which has consumed threat intelligence. Right or wrong is not the argument here. I have a threat intelligence which says file ABC is bad. Right or wrong? I don't know. We're not going to argue on the credibility of that intelligence. The concept here is I want to go back and check whether your endpoint solution called Cisco AMP, first of all, did it see ABC? Answer is yes. If it sees ABC, how does it classify ABC? Does it classify it as a good file or a bad file? It will come back and say, I think it's a good file. So first of all, it tells you that the intelligence is saying it's a bad file. Your EDR solution is still thinking it's a good file. So first of all, it opens that visibility to you that I am exposed with a threat which is in my network today. Maybe we'll not reach the state of whether it's in a network or not. I'm just querying to say if it is in my network, my EDR solution will not block it because it still thinks it's a good file. Now I want to know, was the file seen? And it comes back and yes, I've seen the file and I have not blocked it. Or I will say, I have not blocked the file, but I am seeing a callback from this file to a domain which is bad. Now, my umbrella solution, which is my DNS security solution, has been blocking the file, which essentially means the entire rat race that would have started if you would have probably got the threat intelligence saying ABC is a bad file and your EDR has not blocked it. You're not realizing that because of an integrated threat architecture, the file is not getting executed because the callback from this file to the bad domain is being blocked by Cisco umbrella. So you are still protected, you're not exposed.
User experience?
So user experience goes back to the core sensors. This is an API. It is giving you meaningful information to tell you what is the level of exposure and if you want to override it. So from threat response, you can override and go and tell your AMP EDR solution, you've been calling this clean. From now onward, you're going to call this as a bad file. And good news is, I was not exposed, and I know I was not exposed because this file was not executing because my own umbrella solution was blocking it. So it's more around the response capability. And that's why I said there is no question of this solution giving you false positives because that is rendered back with the sensors.
I have just 2 points of time now.
Sure, sir.
One comment. We have seen, of course, people travel all across. US employees, when they are deputed in India for 2 months or so, they are shocked to see how Indian organizations operate or the employee mindset towards security. They are literally shocked. When Indian employees go there, they see everywhere a problem. Oh, we can't do this. Oh, we can't do this. Even whether this is a physical security or a whatever you can say IT security. So culturally, we understand that yes, this shock value exists at both the places, and people here believe everything in US is more protected, more secure, more organized, and your data also says that Asia Pac region sees the problem. Now, a question to you being in this field. The moment Iran thing happened, within 2 hours, 2 teenagers hacked US government site and put all the Trump photos in a very good way. Again, will it go back to that particular US government department has not taken security protection, or in 2 hours they managed to do something so big? And they could have done a lot of things also. They left a message, we are leaving with you. How do we read that?
Okay, the views are going to be my personal views and don't reflect anything about what Cisco is using. Yeah, this is my personal view to this. So you really can't pinpoint and say that because you really don't know what went behind all of this. Was there an insider involved or not? Debatable. Was there information available with these hackers which they had much before what they did and they were asked to execute it? What was the motive behind it? Was it political? Was it state funded? Or was it an amateur doing it? Yeah. So
Somebody detected it and stopped it before.
Yeah. So
And in 2 hours they responded to something which happened.
Yeah.
That is amazing from a
Exactly.
working angle. That is amazing that you do something and in 2 hours your IT systems are taken over by somebody.
Yeah.
And you claim to be secure. I mean, that was very baffling to me the moment I heard. When one thing happened. This happened was actually more shocking for me. Wow, what are we talking here?
And the problem is the political or the media spin to most of these things could be either ways.
No, I'm not seeing from a political, I'm seeing pure technology guy. Means somebody 2 hours able to get access, change it and come out of it and it went undetected and flashed all over the world. What happened to incident response?
So
what happened to who is connected?
Exactly.
That's
And debatable, what is the motive?
like pure IT angle, nothing to do with any side of politics, but simply is that this incident happened and it happened so fast. And it happened after 2 months, we can have hundreds of conspiracy theories. Insider, it happened in 2 hours. That was amazing skill shown by somebody in technology, and it was amazing ignorance shown by somebody who is supposed to.
And can you replicate it now?
Pardon?
Can you replicate it now? Can you do it again?
No, they would have taken something, but then again it goes back. And one more point, in Indian companies, when they put say credit card transactions on the web or everywhere, PIN code got introduced. How come US has not introduced the PIN code? The entire DFSI headache of Sri Shankar will go away. You take my card. In India, when initially it happened, people were giving card to petrol guy. He used to take to some room to swipe when Wi-Fi based swipe cards were not available, and the guy is sitting coolly in the car. Okay, he will bring back the car. Now, if you copy all that thing and put it to a US website, you can do whatever transaction.
Even when you travel, you just swipe your card. Nobody asks you for a PIN.
Why has US and other countries not implemented that second?
So I'm not the best person to answer that question. But I think maybe you could throw some light on, are there any...
The industry can tell us why US and some countries have not implemented. And every time I go Malaysia somewhere, people will come and send another card to me. And then I have to do my entire setting into 20 automated systems that we have.
So
Not
two things...
the right thing to talk of in the forum, but I think it's best that we walk away from that subject. But that's
I guess we can take all this.
that's a very deeper.
That's
a very deeper subject.
I think it's a great presentation, Anubhav.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, gentlemen, for being here. Yeah. And
thank you, sir.
We'll be around along with this team, and we can carry on the discussion more informally over drinks and dinner.
Yep.
So thank you so much.